The chandeliers of the Royal Crest Banquet Hall shimmered like frozen stars, scattering golden light across a room filled with more than 200 guests. Crystal glasses clinked softly, expensive perfumes lingered in the air, and polished laughter rose and fell like waves of practiced elegance. Tonight was my mother. In-law's moment, the annual charity gala she hosted to reinforce her reputation as a respected social figure. Everything had to be perfect, and perfect in her world meant controlled, polished, and flawlessly obedient, which is why I was never supposed to be seen only useful. I stood near the service corridor, holding a tablet in my hand, quietly coordinating staff, checking seating arrangements, and ensuring the final food orders matched her exact instructions. I wasn't dressed like a guest. I never was. Even though I had helped fund part of this event through my own savings when her donors fell short, I was still assigned the invisible role. The help, that was what she called people like me, just never directly to their faces when it mattered. But tonight, she didn't even try to hide it. The room went silent as she tapped her glass with a spoon. Her voice, sweetened with pride, carried across the hall. Before we begin, she announced with a glowing smile, "I want to acknowledge someone who has been assisting us behind the scenes." My fingers paused on the tablet. A few heads turned toward me instinctively. I felt it before I heard it, the shift. The tone, the setup. Her eyes found mine, sharp and deliberate, like she had been waiting for this moment all evening. "She's been so helpful," she continued, her smile widening, truly like part of the staff. "Honestly, she's just the help we couldn't have done this without." For half a second, I didn't understand. Then I did. A soft ripple of laughter spread through the guests, some confused, some amused, others simply following her lead. Glasses lifted, whispers passed, and suddenly I wasn't a daughter. In-law in a respected family, I was entertainment. My face burned, but I didn't move. My hands tightened around the tablet so hard my knuckles turned white. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, loud and unsteady, as if my body itself was asking me to react. But I didn't, because across the room, my husband sat near the VIP table, and he wasn't looking at me. Not once. That hurt more than her words. My mother-in-law continued speaking, moving on as if she hadn't just dropped a match into my dignity. She raised her glass again, basking in the attention, the admiration, the illusion of control she believed she held over everything, including me. "Let's give a round of applause for all the people who make this night possible," she said smoothly, turning away from me as though I had already been dismissed from existence. Applause followed, polite, controlled, empty. My chest felt tight, but I forced myself to breathe normally. "Step back, don't react, not here, not like this," because something inside me had just shifted. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was clarity, cold, sharp, and unsettlingly calm. I looked down at my tablet again. The screen was still glowing, still showing schedules, names, approvals, financial notes, things she never bothered to check, but fully depended on. For the first time tonight, I saw them differently, not as tasks, as evidence. Behind me, a staff member whispered, "Ma'am, should we continue?" I nodded slightly. "Yes," I said softly. "Everything continues." Because the event would go on. The guests would laugh, eat, and celebrate. And she would keep smiling like nothing happened. But something had already begun, and she didn't even realize it yet. The night ended the way all her events ended: perfectly staged applause, carefully curated goodbyes, and a final photograph where my mother-in-law stood at the center like a queen holding court over her empire, and I stood nowhere in the frame. That was intentional. Back home, the silence felt heavier than the humiliation itself. The grand chandeliers were replaced by dim hallway lights, the perfume of wealthy guests replaced by stale air and closed doors. My heels clicked softly on the marble floor as I entered, but no one greeted me. My husband was already home. He sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone, as if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't just been reduced to a joke in front of 200 people. "She was just joking," he said without looking up when I passed by. I stopped, just joking. Those 2 words carried the weight of every time I had been dismissed in that house. Every correction disguised as tradition, every decision made without me because I was too emotional, every time I swallowed my voice to keep peace. I said nothing, because I had learned something important in that house. Speaking only mattered if someone was willing to hear you. And no one ever was. Upstairs, I closed the bedroom door behind me and finally let myself breathe properly. My reflection in the mirror looked composed, but my eyes told a different story. There was no crying. Not anymore. The tears had already come earlier in the service corridor, where no one important could see them. Now there was only stillness and something sharper beneath it. My past wasn't what they believed. Before marriage, I had worked in corporate compliance and financial auditing. I had built a career that required precision, logic, and the ability to see patterns others missed. I had my own income, my own name on documents that mattered. I had chosen to pause everything after marriage because I believed family deserved trust. I had mistaken control for care. That mistake ended tonight. I opened my laptop, not with emotion, but with intention. Files I had quietly maintained over months sat neatly organized. Invoices from the charity foundation, donation records, vendor contracts, payment approvals. Things no one thought I would ever bother to understand. My mother-in-law believed paperwork was decoration, something assistants handled, something beneath her attention, but I had noticed something she hadn't. Numbers never lie. A small inconsistency here, a repeated vendor there, a missing approval signature that appeared in another document under a slightly altered format. Small cracks, easy to ignore individually, but together they formed a pattern. I leaned back in my chair, fingers still on the keyboard, my expression unreadable even to myself. This wasn't anger, not yet. It was structure, and structure meant control. Downstairs, I heard faint laughter. My husband, watching television now, relaxed again, already detached from what had happened. The world had already moved on for him. But mine hadn't, because tonight had changed the shape of everything. I saved the files into a secure folder and closed the laptop slowly. Outside, the city lights flickered against the window, distant and indifferent. But inside me, something had begun to organize itself quietly, patiently, like a storm forming far beyond the horizon. They thought I was invisible, they thought I was temporary, they thought I was just the help, but the truth was simpler. I was the only person in that house who had ever been paying attention. The invitation arrived in gold foil, sealed with the same emblem my mother-in-law loved to display on everything she called prestigious. Another grand event, another charity showcase, another night where she would stand beneath chandeliers and pretend kindness was her birthright. But this time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt ready. The event was held at the same elite hall, even bigger than before. This time, there were nearly 300 guests, business owners, politicians, donors, influencers. Cameras lined the entrance. Every smile was curated for public admiration. My mother-in-law stood at the center of it all, wearing deep crimson silk, glowing like she had already won the night before it began. And I arrived quietly. No spotlight, no announcement, no introduction, just me holding a slim black folder. Inside, it was one document, one paper, but it carried more weight than anything she had ever signed her name on. I walked through the side entrance where staff moved quickly between tables. No one stopped me. No one questioned me. I was still, in their eyes, exactly what she had labeled me as, the help, but labels only work when people believe them. And I no longer did. As the program began, she took the stage. Her voice flowed effortlessly through the microphone, polished with confidence and practiced humility. "Tonight," she said warmly, "we continue our mission of service, transparency, and trust." Applause followed. I watched from the edge of the hall. Trust, that word lingered longer than the others, because trust was exactly what she had built her entire image on, and exactly what she had misused. When the donation segment began, she proudly announced a new sponsorship partnership, one that would expand her foundation internationally. The guests leaned in impressed, cameras zoomed, flashlights blinked. She was ascending again, higher than ever. That was when I stepped forward, not dramatically, not rushed. Just calmly, through the side aisle, until I reached the front section where coordinators and legal representatives were usually seated. A few staff members noticed me and stiffened. But I didn't stop. My mother-in-law's eyes flicked toward me for a fraction of a second. Annoyance first, then confusion, then something colder, warning. "What is she doing here?" I heard someone whisper. I didn't answer. I simply raised the black folder and opened it. Inside was the verified audit report. Official stamps, cross, verified financial discrepancies, documented fund reallocations that did not match public disclosures, signed compliance notes that contradicted internal records, all compiled carefully, legally, and unmistakably real. I placed it on the table in front of the stage coordinator. Before the sponsorship announcement continues, I said softly, "This needs to be reviewed publicly." The room shifted instantly. Like oxygen had been pulled from it. My mother-in-law's smile didn't disappear, but it froze. A perfect mask held too tightly in place. "This is inappropriate," she said quickly, stepping forward. "Remove her. She is confused. She doesn't understand how these things work." A few nervous laughs rose from the audience, unsure whether to follow her lead. But then the coordinator opened the folder. Silence, the kind that doesn't belong in a room full of powerful people. The kind that means something has already broken. Page by page, the truth unfolded in front of them. Numbers that didn't match. Transfers that weren't disclosed. Approvals that didn't exist in official records. Even the confident faces in the front row began to change, interest turning into calculation. My mother-in-law stepped forward sharply. "Stop this," she hissed under her breath, low enough that only I could hear. "What do you think you're doing?" I finally looked at her, not with anger, not with fear, with calm understanding. "I'm doing what you never expected," I said quietly, paying attention. The silence in the hall didn't break, it fractured. Whispers spread through the crowd like electricity through glass. Powerful men who had once applauded my mother-in-law now leaned toward each other, recalculating everything they thought they knew. Phones lifted subtly. Screens recorded. The room that had once been hers was no longer under her control. My mother-in-law stood frozen on the stage, her perfect expression cracking at the edges. "This is a misunderstanding," she said sharply into the microphone, but her voice no longer carried confidence. "These documents are manipulated. Someone is trying to sabotage this event." No one clapped. No one nodded. Even her most loyal supporters stayed quiet, waiting for proof rather than performance. I remained where I was, just off the front aisle, still holding nothing now but calm. The coordinator flipped another page, then another. Each one deepened the silence, auditable transfers, missed disclosures, duplicate vendor payments. Internal approvals that didn't match official records. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse. It was precise. And precision was something this world understood very well. My mother-in-law turned slightly toward me, her eyes flashing with panic now instead of pride. "You," she said under her breath, barely audible, "you did this." I didn't answer immediately, because the truth was not in the accusation. It was in the realization, for the first time she was looking at me, not as invisible, not as staff, not as the help, but as someone who had been seeing everything all along. "Yes," I said quietly, just that, one word. It landed heavier than all her speeches combined. A sponsor stood up slowly from the front row. Then another. Conversations turned urgent. The word withdraw was mentioned more than once. A legal advisor leaned in toward the stage coordinator, already making calls. The empire she had built on reputation was collapsing in real time. Not with noise, but with withdrawal. Control didn't explode. It evaporated, and she felt it happening beneath her feet. Her voice lowered when she spoke again, no longer addressing the crowd, but me directly. "What do you want?" she asked tightly. "Money, recognition, name it. We can fix this privately." A few guests shifted uncomfortably at that sentence. Because it revealed everything. This wasn't about truth to her. It was about containment. I stepped closer, not onto the stage, not into her space, just close enough that my voice wouldn't need to rise. "I didn't come here for money," I said, her jaw tightened. "I came here because you made a mistake." I continued softly. "When you decided my worth could be spoken into existence in front of 200 people." Her expression flickered. For the first time, she had no response prepared. Because humiliation had always been something she gave, not something she understood. The room remained still as I reached into my folder and placed one final page on the table in front of her. Not an accusation, not a threat. A legal notice of review initiation, already signed, already validated. Her eyes scanned it quickly, and then something changed in her posture. The certainty collapsed. "No," she whispered, almost to herself. "You can't," but she knew I already had. Her hands trembled slightly as she lowered the microphone. The grand voice she once used to command rooms was gone. Now there was only a woman standing under bright lights, suddenly unsure who was watching her fall. And then, for the first time in her life, she looked at me without arrogance, without control, without power. "Please," she said quietly, voice breaking just enough for the word to be real. "We can settle this. Don't destroy everything." The word hung in the air like something unfamiliar on her tongue. Beg. She had never used it before. Not even once. But now she had. And I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I simply looked at her, the same way she had once looked at me in front of 200 guests, and I understood something very clearly. Revenge was never loud. It was just truth finally allowed to speak.